Thank you so much, and welcome to day 3 of the Africa Food Safety Workshop being held here in Kempton Park at Emperor's Palace. 250 people, delegates that have arrived from 35 African countries, have made their way here to this workshop to talk about the most important issue around food safety and ensuring that that food is being tested with quality. And to talk to me a little bit more about this, I have Dr. Maria Fernandez-Wiley, one of the top scientists at this workshop. Thank you so much, Dr. Wiley. Just tell me a little bit more, just a little bit about what your area of specialization is.
Thank you, Nozi. At the National Metrology Institute of South Africa, we are working in the analytical chemistry laboratory, where we are making accurate reference materials that the food safety testing laboratories can use to make sure that they are providing measurement results that are correct. So it's a quality control element that's critical for you as the consumer to know that the results you're getting from these testing labs are actually correct and the food is safe to eat.
That is fantastic, and that leads me actually to my first question around the issue of the microbes that we find in our food. Just talk to me a little bit about how you're testing for that and how you're ensuring that there is quality control around the issue of those mycotoxins.
Yes, mycotoxins are those fungal metabolites that grow on the food. You can see the fungus growing, and they actually release these toxins, and when you eat them, you get sick. Now, the labs are required to test these foods because if you eat it, you'll get sick. So there's regulations to make sure that the food gets tested. And so what NAMISA does is we are producing reference materials for the mycotoxin in the maize, because in South Africa we eat a lot of maize, so we test for it very often, and we also test for it in peanut butter. So we provide that reference material that lab can then use to check routinely, are we getting the right result here? Because if we get the right result here, then we know what we are testing here for the samples that are coming in from outside, that we are confident that those results are correct, and you know that you can eat that food.
Yeah, and testing is absolutely important. It leads me again to the issue about the issue of possible metals in some bodies of water, and how that could, because it's going into the water stream, could go into our food sources. Yes. Why is that of concern? And just explain, break it down to us on that issue.
Yes, well, as a mining country, you might find that you end up with a lot of what's called heavy metals. These are toxic metals that accumulate in your body and can cause cancer. So it can end up in the water. It obviously will end up in the soil through irrigation, and then it goes into your vegetables. And then when you eat it, obviously you're getting exposed to those metals. And again, there are regulations and through the Department of Health, through Department of Agriculture, that require the food manufacturers to test that there are none of these metals there. And again, it's not just for local consumption that it's important, but also if we're exporting our agricultural commodities, we want to make sure that we don't have those metals in there, because you can imagine there was an incident a couple of years ago in South Africa where we had cadmium in pineapples. It actually came through the fertilizers that we imported, but that meant when we tried to export the pineapples, we couldn't, because when you test, the level of cadmium is above the maximum residue limit, which means it gets rejected at the border. So in the case of the European Union, it gets rejected. And then they cause that consignment to get destroyed. Yeah. So it's unfit for human consumption, so it has to be destroyed. Now, you can imagine it takes a long time to grow a pineapple, and then to find that you've shipped it all the way to Europe only to get it rejected at the border and destroyed. It's such a pity. So being able, exactly, and jobs sometimes. So being able to accurately measure the metals in the food is also important. So as NAMISA, we're trying to support those laboratories to always make sure that that testing has happened, not just private laboratories, but also the public laboratories that do the inspection and the monitoring. They also need these references that NAMISA is providing.
Yeah. You know, Dr. Wiley, a couple of years back, we know that we had the issue of polony basically trying to kill a lot of South Africans. And, you know, the labs were under so much strain to try and, you know, pick up the correct consignment of those items that were infected. How do you, how does the lab work in terms of helping to ensure that they track and trace correctly the correct samples?
I think the labs are very challenged in the sense is that they analyze the samples that they receive. So I think one of the biggest challenges that are out there when it comes to food safety testing is how the samples are collected. So you'll remember with the listeria outbreak and the polonias, it was very difficult for them to track where the listeria was coming from because you're normally taking swabs in a certain area. But if you're not taking in the area where the contamination actually takes place, you will miss it. The lab can only measure the samples that you bring. So representative sampling is very important when it comes to food safety testing.
Yeah. Dr. Wiley, all of this comes together in ensuring that we provide quality product when it comes to us trading with external partners. Talk to me about that.
South Africa has got a very robust agricultural economy and it's a self-regulating economy. So I would say as far as extensive testing goes, it's really great for South Africa. We don't get that many rejections on the border when we export. I think as consumers we can have confidence that the testing capacity in South Africa is great. But one of the benefits or the outcomes of this Africa Food Safety Workshop is to be able to share that knowledge with our African neighbours to make sure that food safety is, enabled across the continent by sharing our knowledge and experiences with our colleagues there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wiley. We're going to leave it there. Knowledge sharing, absolutely critical. One of the tenets of this particular workshop to ensure that, across the continent, we are sharing knowledge, we are sharing resources in ensuring that we're providing quality food that is safe and it is tested and it is able or it is ready for trade to our, continental partners across overseas in Europe and in America and in China. And this is what is so critical about this particular workshop. For now, it's back to you in studio.